Okay, perfect. All right. I'm glad you all could make it again. First class was great, I think. Kind of set the tone. Some of you are able to attend the Lower Bookstore event. We actually have the audio from that if you all want to listen to that as well. If you did attend and you took a photo and extra credit and you had issues uploading it to the Canvas, let me know and I can figure out how to do that. I don't know how to do it myself, but we can figure that out. Today we have Yusuf Hassan, who is co-founder or founder of BlackMass Publishing, and has been doing a lot of great work around archiving, zine publishing, artists in general, doing a lot of work in the book arts, but also weaving together music and the written word and everything in between. He's here for a month as part of a residency we're doing here at UCLA. So we had that Lower Bookstore event. We're going to be doing a few more events and projects along the way. And he has graced us with his presence and to talk about his practice, some of the work he's working on now, and maybe we can hear about some of the future work he's got going. And maybe figure out some ways to get some of y'all involved in some of the work, because I know it's a big piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I missed anything, but unless you take it away, if you have any questions or anything, let me know and I can.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank Justin for inviting me here. It's a pleasure to be with you all this morning. Thank you for having me. I like to always start by letting everybody always know that I'm more of a student, more than anything, and then everything is based off of process. As Justin explained and spoke about very briefly in the initial introduction, was my practice predominantly deals with self-publishing, particularly zines. Zines in the format of the zines has always been based on hand-to-hand exchange, community organizing, thinking about documentation, but thinking about it through small press and self-publishing methods. Zines were really born out of a need to document history, but a very complex way of thinking about history, but really thinking about it through a very unfiltered way and questioning things, and also thinking about how this method of publishing deals with the traces of research, and as I keep iterating, community, which is very important. I've been publishing since 2014, but BlackMass was realized in the fall of 2019, and it's been a very successful press. BlackMass is inherently rooted in collaboration, and I use this method to distribute information. And just a quick brief on BlackMass Publishing. BlackMass Publishing was built during the process of my own research with archives, and it was built because I was looking for a way to keep a tab on the work that I was doing, but also thinking about how I could demystify it for me, and just keep track of it in a very easy format. And a lot of times when I would go to archives, they would bring these boxes, would be lots of boxes, and the information in the boxes were not organized in a way that I seen fit in for my own research and how I wanted to sort through the information. So what I would do is I would Xerox the portions of the information that I wanted to research and then make small little pamphlets and research based off of this method. So I brought a healthy amount of material. This is about the last 3 years of everything that I've printed. Some of it I've distributed, some of it I've given out. Some of it have been distributed throughout the US, Europe, also the continent as well, through different various programs, and just thinking about how this hand-in-hand exchange touch on so many topics that I'm interested in facilitating through this format. A lot of the publishing methods have a lot to do with poetry and music and literature, and essays and writings. It has a very large visual component. There's a lot of imagery, a lot of research, a lot of my own personal material. So there's a lot of this woven in to a lot of this material. Another thing that's at the heart of this practice and that keeps this practice alive is the fact that I like to keep it not exclusively to Xeroxing, but Xerox has also been the format in which zines was birthed from because it was a very easy format. It was very cheap for its time, and it was you could push out a lot of material at once and distribute it. Zines also has been built from a culture of urgency and getting information out very, very, very fast. The poets used it. The community used it when there were poetry readings, community organizing, zines and pamphlets was used in political organizing. Noticeably here in California, Emory Douglas, who was the minister and of one of the ministers of the art department for the Black Panther Party, used the pamphlet and zine method to also distribute information. He used very engaging graphics to draw the people in, to speak to what was taking place at the times. It's also a paper trail. It creates a paper trail of discussion, critical discourse, conversation, and exchanging of information. The zine has always been a place for discourse for me within my own practice, and also to go back into my own work and research it as a method to re-engage not only with history, but the way I'm questioning history. And lastly, anybody could do it, which is one of the things that's always been inspiring about this format of publishing is that you don't have to be a publisher by definition, and you don't have to be an artist. You could focus and operate in any position in life and still have the need to think about this format and information sharing. And I like to call it an information system because it operates like this. The information that I've used in this format have been very critical for me in thinking about things that I'm interested. There are things that I've researched and created it through this method, and things that I've continued to come back to, music being one of them. I started to write on music more now, but not just the rhythm and the sound of music, but thinking about the spiritual aspect of music and how music moved me through a spiritual element. There's also been publications made throughout my travels, throughout the continent, Senegal and Morocco, and just different places also throughout Europe, which I've used as a foundational principle on how I'm thinking about this practice, and really thinking about how this practice creates conversation between me and those who I'm in dialogue with. So I brought as I said, a healthy amount of material. As Justin said during the introduction, that I'll be here for 1 month, and in this 1 month, I'm sorry. Do you have a napkin? I'm so sorry. Sorry. I'll be here for 1 month, and in this 1 month, we're going to be doing a series of programming, not just that focus on the publishing aspect, but also the community aspect, which I'm very engaged in. BlackMass Publishing was also birthed out of the need to organize people and bringing this material to them firsthand. How I even started to distribute this information at first was I would give this information, thank you, Justin, I would give this information to friends who would then pass it off to other friends. Sometimes they would give it to their professors, and their professors would research it, and they were really engaged in the practice. And this is really how the message started to expand and started to spread. I'll go through not everything, but I'll also leave enough time and room for all of you to engage with some of the material that I've brought in today. just to get a sense of what I'm working through. So a lot of it is one-offs, research, pamphlets and flyers from different libraries that hosted me, things that I've come back to research to, zines that I've made even up to my arrival here. 2 weeks ago, Linton Johnson was in New York. He's a British poet, Jamaican British poet, who has not been in America in over 20 years, and he made a very rare appearance to do a one-night poetry reading in Brooklyn. And this is a zine that I made from that documentation. I use the rubber stamp as well. Everything is really tangible, hand to hand. Even in the age of the internet, and thinking about how the age of the digital era has really affected our attention span, how we communicate with information, how we even communicate in this setting. Especially during COVID, when COVID happened, everything was done virtually. It was also the first time that I used Zoom. It didn't affect my work, but it allowed me to re-examine how I'm interacting with people, and it pushed me and prompted me more to create a need for tangibility, and even thinking about how the tangible aspect affect us, different from things that we're looking through a PDF, which I'm not against. PDFs and things like that, but I like to always leave a nice distance and proximity between myself and those materials, so that I can feel spiritually connected to the work that I'm doing, and also think about, again, the hand-in-hand exchange that I've also, what this work was built off of. This is just some material. I also like to create these works very fast in nature. This something that's also, zines is built from a culture of urgency and getting material and messages out very fast. I made this actually in Costavel in Pristina when I spent 1 week there. I made this in maybe an hour or two out of their special collections library. And it's all in Albanian, the language there. And these are all just from their newspaper clippings. And I scanned news clippings and things that was taking place between the decades there. And I made this as the form of documentation and a paper trail to my time there. And I then placed one copy back into their special collections and their research library, so that others can also dissect and think about how, when things are taken out of its original setting, how we interact with them from a different aspect. So, it's things like this, small little pamphlets like this that I make. This was Yusuf Hassan and the students of VCU. I spent 1 week in Virginia at VCU Arts as a visiting publisher in residence. And my first day there, I did a lecture, and I organized a prompt where I encouraged every student that attended the lecture or was not able to attend the lecture to leave a page in the studios upstairs, which we then re-Xeroxed, bound it as a way of thinking about working in collaboration with each other. And it was very successful. This is one of the pamphlets that we made. It was from February 27th of this year. And it spoke on different topics. So it's like write-ins and essays, there's visual components and things like that. That was in this little pamphlet. And then we have music, which plays a large part of what I'm thinking about. Fantasy music. I like to also think about these zines as a way to do fantasy pairings. I love Miles Davis. I also love Bad Brains, and I did a zine with both of them together. And they never worked together, but through this zine, I brought them together. So just thinking about how this method of publishing can also create fantasy and the law of fantasy, and thinking about cultural figures that were alive during the time, but never worked together, or past and present poets or musicians or political leaders that you may have wanted to think about them in proximity together. And I also use this format of publishing as this. This right here was a small little pamphlet that I made for a beautiful poet. His name is Russell Atkins. He passed away. He was 94, I believe, but he had a very intricate way of using words and thinking about poetry. He was living in a home at some point to be taken care of. And I remember one night I made this little pamphlet for him, and I sent it through the mail for him, which also connects back to this way of distributing information, correspondence art, where you use mail art as a way to correspond. And during the pandemic, there was a P.O. box that BlackMass made, where we encouraged people to send us things through the mail. When we were not able to be in proximity with each other and talk to each other. Kwame Sorrell, who worked with me at a time with BlackMass Publishing, created this mailing program. And it was a P.O. box that was very beautiful, and people would send things from all over the world, letters and photos, and we would collect this material and then store it into our archive. We would scan it, make publications out of it, resend it, redistribute it, and again create the need for dialogue and conversation and thinking about material, and also thinking about how fast things move as well. And it goes on how we're thinking about press and publishing. This is one I made as a recent tribute to Asata, who transitioned about 2 weeks ago, and I made this for her. And what was so interesting about this is because when you think about her contribution to the cause and how she used information and how she put her life on the line, as she said, to organize the people, and thinking about her contribution and what do we want to add to this contribution, how do we want to add to this contribution, and just thinking about the paper trail. And it's got 2 of her poems in here and a rubber stamp that I dedicated to her. She was also a lover of jazz, and it says Asata lives, and this term was built from the poet Ted Jones. After Charlie Parker passed away, he would go around New York and graffiti, "Bird lives." This was Charlie Parker's nickname. And this was an homage to Charlie Parker, who Ted Jones, the poet, loved so much. Bird died in 1955, and he was a huge inspiration to the beat poets and the poets at the time. And this term, lives, became a way of tributing someone that you love. And so, I kind of thought about continuing this message. So, every time I want to pay homage to someone that I'm inspired by, whether it's a poet or someone who's a writer, or someone who's transitioned, I always would rubber stamp this right here, lives, with their name. Asata lives, Miles Davis lives, and this was off of the graffiti that Ted Jonas used to do when Charlie Parker had passed away. So just thinking about also keeping messaging alive and how messaging it doesn't die when you think about transmitting through information like this. Here's the original copy that I rubber stamped and then rescanned. Just so many different subject matters, and also doing it the old school way, tape, cutting, re-xeroxing. This was a zine that I did on Black Cowboys, to me, which is a very, I wouldn't say not well deserved, researched topic, but I feel like someone need to give more attention to this time in history to Black cowboys, and I've done through the years quite a few different publications on Black cowboys. And this is the latest one that I did earlier this year, and it was really a small contribution to a larger project that I want to do. I like to also think of these pamphlets as the start and the seed to the larger project, the thesis of some sort. There was a student in London actually about 2 years ago who came to a program that I did, and he was finishing up his time at university. He was preparing to write his thesis. He had asked me if it's anything that I could offer him from BlackMass that he could think about for his thesis, and I offered to him Black Wall Street. I had just did a zine on Black Wall Street. It was about 9 pages, and he got the zine, and I gave him my email, and towards the end of the year, he had wrote me. He said, "Oh, I did my thesis on the Black Wall Street," and again, this is how this material is made to operate. It's made to operate as discourse. It's made to operate as exchange and thinking about. And one thing that I've admired about my own work is the fact that I also use it as a form of research. It's research for me because, as I've said before, I'm a student. I'm forever a student. There's no disconnect between the two. I think that that's something that I've always kept present at the heart of the practice and at the core of my own mind, both professionally and personally, thinking about life and going through life as a student, because I've always became from the school of thought that if you leave enough of room for yourself to believe that you've already figured it out, that you will be in a very dangerous place. And I like to always keep a balance between those two, to understand that as much as I am learning, or as much as I've known that I know, there's still so much more that I do not know. And this is what allowed me to remain grounded and thinking of myself as a student. And this is all me thinking about my own entries into life. These are also entries of some sort. I was talking to Justin recently, and we were talking about, the internet and the age of the internet, and the how things like this is still, how could things like this practice, but not just this practice, but thinking about the tangibility, how could this survive at a time where our attention spans are short, and how we're not communicating, and how we're not even using material as a springboard to think about our work and to think about our research. And sometimes it could be very disheartening, and it also takes a certain level of strength and resilience to think about the hand-in-hand exchange and how this information holds so much of depth and so much of power and so much of information that it pushes me more to think about the research through this way. This was a zine that I did from my time in Senegal. This was for the Dakar Art Book Fair Biennale in 2022, and this was a zine that I made for this Biennale, actually, during my time there. And then there's one-off little texts. This is One More Time for Lester Young. I love jazz, so jazz is always at the helm of what I'm thinking about. I want to talk about this one for a bit, because this one is a very special one to me. So this one is called For the Writers. And when in 2013 was the first time that I bought a DLSR, a camera, and this is when I was spreading my wings and just thinking about where I want to go in life and what artistic thing that I'm going to be connected to. Canberra was like the first thing. 2013 is when I started documenting. 2006 is when I actually got my Canberra. But I started to document graffiti first as a entry point into the arts. And during my time of documenting graffiti throughout New York, one thing that I admire about the culture of graffiti is that the short attention span that it had. The short lifespan that it had, because it was also a very rival style of leaving documentation, because there would be tags that I would document, some of them maybe even 3 hours prior, and would come back and either it was removed by the building management, the city, or another rival graffiti artist. So it gave me time to think about how documentation is so important and how things could be wiped away in a matter of seconds. So this was also the first form of documentation that I started to think about. And there was a graffiti artist who, in an interview that I looked at, and I stopped calling him graffiti artist after watching this interview, and his name was Phase 2, and he had said to the interviewer in the early 80s when he was talking to him, the interviewer said to him, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit, he said to him, do you enjoy doing graffiti? And Phase 2 said to him that why can't this be a form of calligraphy? I'm not a graffiti artist. This is just an intricate way of writing. It takes skill, it takes wit, it takes mind matter, mental matter, and I think that we should be addressed as such. This is a style of calligraphy. And I started to call, and he said, we're writers. And when Phase 2 said that, it changed my life of how I, for the sake of argument, seen graffiti artists, but who I love. And since watching this interview with Phase 2 during the time that I seen it, when he said they're writers and that this is a style of calligraphy, it was, for me, it was a new starting point on how I looked at the writers. So these are some of the writers that I've documented. Just a very small portion. I have over 3,000 photos of different times, not just in America, but also throughout Europe, and also love content as well of me documenting local writers in general, people who do not even consider themselves writers at all, who just are thinking about ways of documentation. But it also allowed me to think about the ancient way of documentation and thinking about the writers. Even in Egyptian tombs where there were trinkets and drawings and letter system and numbering systems on stone, and that was also the first style of documentation and graffiti of some sort, or writing of some sort, and leaving a paper trail. And this zine that I did is just little pamphlets that fold out, individually, of just through the years of me documenting writers. And I did some text where it's for the writers. One of the first things I started to document when I got my first camera in 2006 was graffiti. I've lost all the SD cards from that time. In 2013, I started using the Rico and continued to document graffiti from there on. Out both in New York and during my travels throughout Europe. One of the most interesting things about graffiti is how fast and short its lifespan is on the streets, which is why I started to document it in the first place. Phase 2 was so against the labeling of the word graffiti and referred to himself and others as writers. He expressed that it was it was in its own right a form of calligraphy and should be addressed as such. From then on out, I never used the term graffiti again. Here are a few tags I've documented over the years from 2013 to 2019, and it comes with about roughly about 15 selected tags. And the reason why I wanted to use this as a talk point was because it speaks to documentation. It speaks about the lifespan of documentation. It speaks about the how long or short the lifespan of documentation in general could be. It also speaks to information being taken away and hidden, and also speaks to history being written over or undocumented, or the lifespan of history and how we engage with history. And we can take points, simple points, like graffiti, like things like this, and think about it in a critical way. How is this practice allowing us to engage with history on all fronts? Not just the interesting part of history, but the complicated parts of history. And I feel that that is what creates critical discourse. That is what creates dialogue, conversation, community, discourse, the questioning your own self. One thing that I've always done in the midst of this practice is question my own relationship with history, and why is it that I'm questioning it, and what is it that I have to say about history. But more importantly, the paper trail. The paper trail is what keeps the conversation going and how we're engaging with these things, not from just the four walls of the university, but also within the community, at law. Me and Justin and Dorel and Samuel, who were all in the conversation and dialogue with each other, we spoke about this very briefly, and I said before the topic that this is only the scratch of the surface. It's so much for us to cover, and we will not cover it within this time. We wouldn't even cover it within the generation. And I've always said for this practice that this practice is more important than me. I am a small contribution to it. It has since expanded to parts unknown. It does not belong to me, it belongs to people. And this way of thought and this way of understanding comes from me thinking about how political leaders, the Black Panthers, Amir Baraka, Asada, Angela Davis, always said that this belongs to the people. The fight is for the people. The information is for the people. So if you inherently believe that this information is for the people and that it should be distributed amongst the people, then we should use this information as a way to disseminate information and not harbor it for ourselves. So thinking about this practice, again, outside of the realms of the institution, how does this information circulate outside of the realms of the institution? That is discourse that we have to think about within ourselves. And questions that I've also asked myself. And I'll say one last point. Over the years, institutions started to collect this work. They started to collect this work. They started to categorize this work in special interests, special collection, appointment-based. Nothing that I've never foreseen for the work, but I always question my own dealings. How could I leave enough room between myself and the institutions? But also, how could I use the institutions as a stepping stone to the greater cause? How? And being in conversation with the institutions allow me more freedom than you may believe. And I'm very critical of how the institutions operate, how they move, how they think, how the power structures of it is. But those are all questions that we have to think about within ourselves. How do we break down the walls? How do we retrieve the information and then not only recontextualize the information, but how do we be in conversation with the information? And, when I give you time to sit with this information and go through it, I know that you will not have that much of time to sit with every piece of information, but I'm almost certain that there will be something that you will come to through this information, whether it's a short text, whether it's a short poem, something visually pleasing, the paper that I use, the text, the font, the images, the colors, something, the way they're all hubbed in this box and all stacked on each other, there will be something that will be left with you. And even in my short time with you, me even re-engaging with this, I open it quite often, but I have not been to the bottom of it in quite some time. So, it's, I may rediscover some things, and I always rediscover things through my own work. I just want to thank you all. First of all, I want to thank Justin for giving me this opportunity to sit and talk with you. I would all like to thank you for allowing me your time, to allow me space to hear, to question, to even be in discourse with what you heard. And I welcome discourse. I appreciate discourse. It's healthy. It keeps the conversation going. It's a pleasure to be here in California, to be with you all. I look forward to continuing the conversation. It would be nice to have you at some of the programming that we will be doing during the duration of my time here. And, lastly, you are more than welcome to go through some of the information. It's all available for you to see. And I hope that there's something that stick with you, and even if it don't, maybe question what your contribution should be or will be to the greater good of not just the publishing topic, but the topic at hand. I mean, thank you all.
Thank you for that. So I wanted to just reference time. I know we got about an hour and 15 left. I wanted to see if we could do a quick Q&A with some questions that you all may have immediately. Give you all some time with the zines, maybe take a water break and get some coffee. And then we can come back and do a sit-down Q&A with some questions or ideas that pop up from you all going through the zines. And then maybe incorporating it to some of the readings that we had over the last 2 weeks as well. That sound good to y'all? All right.
And also maybe a prompt. Maybe we can all make something too. Maybe you leave something and come back and maybe drop it off to Justin. I go through it, rescan, make pamphlets, hand them back to you.
I love that.
Yeah. All right.
Call and response.
Okay. With that said, are there any immediate questions that anybody had or ideas that came up?
Sure.
I'm wondering how immediate your zine making process is. Because a lot of them are from your travels or from an evening that you had. Do you go back home and make it then, or does it take time for you to ponder over?
Two things. Sometimes I go back home after. I always take notes. So I forget a lot of things. I'm always thinking about a lot of things. So as much as I think about, I always forget too. So I'll make notes on things that I've seen maybe through the day. If it's something I want to make a zine on, I'll come back. I'll make it at night. And in most cases, sometimes I make it instantly, maybe on the train. I'm heading into New York. I live in Connecticut, so it's about an hour distance. So I'll have enough time. I'll make maybe 2 or 3 zines, send it to my printer. By the time I get off the train, it's already printed. Pick it up. I already have the information. I can hand it out. If I need to, I can, it can help me research. So I would say that it's very immediate in most cases. Sometimes, if I procrastinate a little bit, maybe I'll make it in a month or 2. But for the most part, it's very urgent. It's very fast. It's quick. It's quick. It's like zine. Like I said, the practice is always based on urgency. And I like to keep that at the heart of the practice. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
I heard in your talk the word discourse, discussion, and dialogue very often, and I'm curious if that's an interest that you've developed as you've been making these zines, or if that interest in the concept of dialogue existed before you got into making zines.
I've always been interested in debate and discourse and dialogue because I think that is what really keeps the conversation alive. But even in my own findings, with me questioning history, if I'm questioning history, how can I then create a wall for myself not to be questioned, or for myself not to be in conversation or dialogue? So I think that there's a lot of things that are inherently a part of the practice, which is collaboration, but discourse and dialogue has always been a also inherently a part of this thought process, because all of this is a conversation, everything. So I'm always leaving room for this exchange, for myself, but also for the work as well, because I'm also questioning my own work too. There's things that I'm questioning, constantly questioning and coming back, and sometimes I can't wrap my head around it, and then I come back and I'm questioning, and I'm seeing what's going on. Like even my time in Senegal, I still question that time from my time in Senegal. Do my own work. You know, what did I miss? Did I represent the continent well? Did I document it from a place of integrity? Did I make sure that I not, document or write about something in a way that left too much room to be misinterpreted? So questioning my own work has always been a part of it. And I want to say something quickly also about Senegal too. A friend of mine, her name is Amy Saul. She taught a class at Parsons about 3 years ago. And it was a very short-lived class. I told her she should bring it back. It's a beautiful class. And she's Senegalese. And the class that she did was the Western world's reimagining through the continent through photography. And the base of the class was pretty much the misrepresentation and the misconceptions of Africa through pictures, through historically. And it gave me a new perspective. Not that I went in not thinking, but it gave me a new perspective on how slowing down and understanding how you're documenting and how much it means, because once it's placed out into the world, even if you are a Senegalese documenting Senegal, you could miss the point to create meaningful dialogue or miss a representation of even your own culture. So we have to be very careful. So I always make sure that discourse is even at the heart of my own mirror. Yeah.
Any other questions? All right, I want to give you all some time with the zines then. What I'm going to ask, because I know a lot of us have liquids on the table, if you could put your liquids on the windowsill, just so we don't accidentally spill anything on the zines. You all can take a look at it. We'll take probably about 15 minutes.
Okay, so I'm sure you all had some time, very brief, to go through some of the material. It's a lot. This is not everything, but this is pretty much a small entry point into my mind, what I'm thinking about, what I have to say, what I'm questioning, how I'm looking at different forms of documentation and certain subject matters that thinking about. And repetition is also a huge part of this practice. I'm pretty sure that you've also came across a lot of things that you've seen not necessarily multiples of, but maybe the same subject matter in different forms. So repetition is a huge part of how I'm thinking about my own practice and thinking about this way of distributing information. And there's a lot of things that I come back to time and time again, because I'm not finished with it. It's a process. And I'm sure you know that music is one of them. I always thought that there's so many different ways that we can think about documenting our work and thinking about, because these are also notes to me. They're notes, they're entries. They hold the interest level of everything that I'm thinking about, whether it be visually, and even things that I'm trying to put into perspective for myself. There's letters here, even a letter that I wrote to one of the members of the Black Liberation Army. Actually, I found out where he was housed, and I wrote him a letter, and he wrote back. This was during the pandemic, actually. He was very close with Asada. And I wrote him a letter. I still have the original letter. We correspond through the mail about twice. And he was released, actually. He was released after, I want to say, he was incarcerated since the late 80s, and they had just released him in 2020. And we were corresponding through the mail. So, it's just a lot of things in here. Letters, notes, index lists to certain books that I've, I also keep an index, an entry of where the material is going when it's going into libraries. So this is also a way for me to just see where it's going. I hope that this information was able to spark something for your own thought process and your own way of thinking through research and how you're looking at this body of work, not just mine, but your own body of work as well, as a way to govern thought and process. And I think it'll be nice. I think this will also be I wish that I had brought a copy. I have it here with me, Radical Publishing. That we did. Oh, you have? Oh.
It's not. It's all the zines, but it's not.
Okay.
Context together.
Okay. So, myself and Justin, we've been in conversation for a long time. Very good conversation, actually. Very good conversation. Good discourse. Good conversation. But we just recently finished this box set of 30 sets that will be housed in a box, actually the same as this one here. And the title was realized by Justin. It's called Radical Publishing. And it is a research box of some sort, because it can operate in so many different ways. But to give little or some context to it, it is 12 publications from various different poets, different subject matters that we were different things that we've discussed through our own talks, like Marcus Garvey, who is also really how me and Justin became into conversation. I give him a zine on Garvey, and that also sparked so many different conversations after. So Garvey, there's one text in here from Garvey, "If you believe the Negro has soul," from 1921. So, this was, the interest of Garvey was sparked through a conversation that we had. So that was something that was included in Radical Publishing.
And speaking of circulation,
Yeah.
that zine that he gave me on Garvey, I actually gave to Garvey's granddaughter.
Yeah.
So I don't even
Yeah.
have it. And it hurt a little bit, 'cause I really like it.
Yeah, and so it's things like that, hand to hand. Again, I spoke about the hand to hand, how these things transfer to hand. That's really how also BlackMass started too, is from me giving things to friends who would then pass it to another friend, who would then pass it to professor pass it to librarian, and it just went from hand to hand. So it's the work is made to do what it's doing. Another publication that's a part of the Radical Publishing series that we have for this box set is If We Must Die. And that was, the title was from Claude McKay's poem, If We Must Die. And this was pretty much just Xeroxed photos of different black people that were killed in the 60s and 70s. There was this newspaper that I had found from this time, and these were just all like pictures and I just rescanned them, and I thought it was very fitting for Claude's poem, and I titled it "If We Must Die." 1919, it's a beautiful poem. It's a very heavy poem. So this is also part of the Radical Publishing series. Black Liberation Army as well. And this one I did a couple of years ago, but my interest in the Black Liberation Army really started to really research their work when I actually, like I said, wrote one of the founder members of Black Liberation Army who was incarcerated. I found out where he was housed actually during the pandemic because I just wanted to thank him. And it's crazy that they actually let my letter go through because I know that they're vetted, and it's like, man, how are you vetting? I mean, how are you thinking a as they would say, a menace. They called him a menace during that time. They said he was dangerous. So I'm pretty sure they read the letter, but they seen how much he cared. Malcolm always said, they said, this is hate teaching, this is love teaching. They say this is hate, you teaching hate. How? I'm teaching love. What do you mean hate? So I was thanking him in the letter, and he also became a Muslim. So he was a Muslim. So I'm a Muslim as well. So we also spoke about his faith as well through these letters. And the reform of how he was thinking about his own life. And not even reform about the things that he fought for. Those were not thoughts that he still held the same position. He was not, the reform was not from how he thought about what he did. Reform was more about how do I continue the fight in other ways. But not necessarily about, I'm sitting in jail for 30 years. I wish I never, revolted. No, he still feel the same way he did in the 80s,
And for those
70s.
who don't know, we hosted Dr. Matula Shakur, when he came out of prison. This is Tupac's stepfather. He was in prison for over 30 years, I believe. Had him actually at the Kabul Commons up here at UCLA. The recording is circulating. I can send you the audio recording of it if you want to see it. He passed away months after he got out, so we were the first public event he did when he got out of prison.
Amazing.
But he specifically described the Black Liberation Army. He went to jail for some police that were killed during what is believed to be a robbing of a Brinks truck.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've ever seen this, you might be too young for this, but there's a movie called Dead Presidents where there's a Brinks truck that gets robbed, and it's staged as a robbery for the money. It's based off of this actual real life event that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But he pretty much says a lot of people think they were trying to rob the truck for money, but really Brinks was the one that was bringing methadone into rehabilitation clinics in New York. And a lot of people don't know this, but Black Liberation Army and Black Panther specifically were the first people in the United States to get certified as acupuncturists. Like people, period. They had to go to Canada to get the certification and came back. And they were doing it to treat drug addiction. So when the government issued this methadone clinic, they argue that they're just replacing one addiction for another addiction, and they're undermining our acupuncture medicines. That was the impetus for eventually what went down. But there's a good podcast on it called Dope is Death. And there's a documentary around it too if y'all are interested in more on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I thank you for the documentary recommendation as well. I'll definitely check it out. So yeah, things like Black Liberation Army is also in this radical publishing series. I have another one on the Black Panther Party, particularly their 10-point program that I printed. We always spoke about the Black Panther Party, spoke about Emory Douglas, his contribution to distributing the information through the arts, thinking about it. Not as necessarily art, but he used art as a vehicle to distribute information through his graphics and text. So the Black Panther Party is also a part of this radical publishing series. Fred Hampton, very young Fred Hampton, who, Chairman Fred. This is what I named it, because Chairman, and at the back, one of my favorite lines of his is, "It's a class struggle, goddammit." Yeah, so I put this little text at the bottom, and this is also a part of the Radical Publishing series. Just to go through a few more, I did this one. It's called "In a State of War." What else? This one, which I love as well. This is pretty much Webb Du Bois' diagrams that he did in the 60s, but it's just blank. It's to mimic his actual diagram, so it's just a chart and blank pieces of paper, but binded with just an insert of the text. This publication is based on more of the 60 original diagrams produced by Webb Du Bois and his students at Atlanta University. So this is just made to think for process, and just take the charts and just to make a binding publication out of it. And the idea for the circulation of these Radical publishing sets is for us to take the 30 that we made that will be housed in these boxes, is to place them in public and community libraries that we think would be good fit-in place for people to come and go through them and to research and have access to, because accessibility is a very important part of the project as well. I think that, especially with information like this, it should be accessible. And I think that accessibility is key with this particular style of publishing and distributing information, especially when you're using zines. Zines is radical, very radical, because this was not even today it's kind of looked at different. It's now in a part of the conversation, but at its time it was very radical, because this was not like a traditional way of publishing. It's like on Xerox paper. This is no one wanted to go through this, but it held so much of information because this was a first-hand account of the community, rather the people as the author. As opposed to it being vetted by some big publications, there was no middleman in the information, so it's unfiltered, raw emotions. So if you want to make the zines and fuck the government, you put this and this and hand them out. Nobody's gonna, you don't have to have the New York Times vet you or whatever press during that time. It's I'm gonna start through the zine, which was actually short for magazine, because this was also a very rebellious style of sharing information, but also it was from those who were looked at as other. So it's mainstream press, this was the cast-offs of society. This was the information that was not made to get into the hands of people, but done through this format. So when thinking about the origins of that, you want to always make sure that the information that you're even using through this format is accessible. And that's one of the things that I grapple with a lot, because a lot of times, more times than often, the material is collected by institutions, and sometimes they'll go and buy it from somewhere, or maybe they'll, maybe at a small shop and they'll buy it and then they'll stick it in their special collections, and then you have to be an academic to see a zine. So it's just man, it was not made to operate like this, but that's the discourse within myself. How do I create enough of understanding of okay, they're gonna collect it, but what do I do to make sure that it's accessible? What we're doing, that's one way. Let's make sure that these are in as many public libraries, public community libraries as possible. Even the work that Radical Hood Library is doing, I recently just found out about the work that they're doing. I'm still learning a lot about it, but I love it. So, just making sure that information is placed in places like where people can just walk off of the street, no appointment and, no academic credits and, recommendations and letter of recommendation. So, there's even some collections you have to have a letter of recommendation to research. It's like, what? You have to have a letter of recommendations to see one box of information, And 3 years ago, I did a tour. I was in the UK, and I was invited to Oxford University. And they were one of the, also like, wild to think that they were actually one of the earlier people to start to collect some of this material. And one of the archivalists there found out that I was doing a program in London, and she said, well, it'll be nice to bring you over to Oxford during your time here. So I came over, and she said that before she got to the library that, Oxford's collecting methods or how they were sourcing information or collecting material, there was no collection for zines or any of this type of stuff. So when she came, she kind of repositioned their acquisitions. And BlackMass was actually one of the kind of like first set of like untraditional material that Oxford started actually collecting in this format. And they did a program, they built a new program at that time where they started to do like, I don't know if radical is the word I can use for Oxford, but they kind of like named it this. So it's like, they had like this students like organized like a book fair of some sort where there was information that could be shared unfiltered. Kind of like, I guess it was like a radical position for Oxford, who is like was not thinking about this way of information. So it's like, all right, we're gonna now let the students take this approach to like organize this stuff. And I did a lecture on this material, and I remember immediately after how engaged the students were, and faculty as well, on how this practice worked. And one of the ladies who also worked in the archive department and acquisitions, she had came up to New York for a program, not for the program that I was doing, but she so happened to be in New York during the time of the program, so she stopped in. And I remember her saying to me how much the students were requesting more information in this style. And, it led to a student that I was telling you about, Mathilde, who graduated from Oxford to do her thesis on BlackMass. And at first, the way she framed her thesis on this project didn't date it, because, BlackMass is still in the conversation. Sometimes a thesis sometimes could, I don't want to say do harm, but it can, I like theses that question things and kind of like build narratives rather than kind of like being so sure of what you think is taking place. But the way Mattel wrote it was such an intricate way for me to even think about this work, that it opened up another discussion of how I'm dealing with the work. And she wrote a beautiful thesis on BlackMass, and the way of publishing through this method. But also, she concludes it with speaking about the effect not only BlackMass, but this style of information had on her time and thinking about publishing at Oxford, because when she arrived, the position was so like, you know, the style that she was pulling from, it was very fancy of some sort. But when she started to go through like pamphlets and zines, and now they collect zines, not even just mine. Oxford actually collect them, which goes to show how important. Not that we need them to tell us how important it is, but it just goes to show how powerful this method is, and how much information it holds. Because now, you know, it's somewhat of a whole department dedicated to this style of publishing. And I'm not saying it started with me for them to collect in this way, but I truly believe it was through the encounter of my work that they started to think about the significance of distributing information in this way. And it you know, that's one good thing that I can look at from the institutional aspect, where now the discourse start with amongst the students, but then it spills out into the streets, you know. But for me, it's always like the opposite side, because it's like, for me, it's like everything starts in the streets and then it kind of like leads back into like the institutions for them to then contextualize what's taking place. But you know, it's, you know, like even with fashion, you know, it's like starts on the streets and then ends up on the runway. You know, it's like they all, you know, it's like this is all from the street. It's just contextualized. You know, it's in Paris now, so now it's like fancy. So you know, I say that all to conclude with this practice, not just for myself, but this practice will always be a part of everything that I do. I also make artist books as well, which is a little separate from this. But even my studies for the artist books are always done through my ideas of the zine, because because the zine helps you think through process to even larger ideas. We should all think about our work through the self-publishing method, because we become our own authors. And I did this residency that I did at the Berkeley Carroll School in Brooklyn, in New York, in 2023. It was called I named the program for the month that I was there in residence. It was called The Student as the Author. And the reason why I named it that is because I truly believe that we are all governed of our own ideas, and we can author our own message through this presentation. And we made a collective publication. I mean, like, I think it was like 300 pages. And then I left the publication on site for the students to then, not just the students of that year, but even if they were there previously, or new students to then come and just go through all sorts of information, poetry, writings, essays, photos, you have it. So I'll end there. Thank you.
We have about 10 minutes left. If there's any personal reflections or comments or questions, I'll y'all be able to go to the zines. If y'all have any questions, I know I have a few, but I'll hold out.
I love that the last thing that you just said, we become our own authors, because that's like the thread that I was hearing and just like really resonating with as you were talking about. Like one of my deep interests is in helping each of us understand that we are historical actors and that we are creators, and understanding the value of our life and becoming archivists of our own lives as we document and archive the conversations and the ways that we move through the world, and the ways that the world impacts us, and all of that. And this is just a beautiful manifestation of that. And something else that struck me as I was engaging with your work and listening is that these zines are kind of like performance on paper. Like that they are the creation, they are the product of a conversation that you've had, or that, you know, other folks that are making zines are having with records and archival material, or with words, and they're creating, you know, there's a product that is created, and that product is then in conversation with the person who it touches hands with, and then they create a product from it. So it's performance.
Yeah.
It's a way to make that whole, the art of life legible on paper, so that we have, like you said, that paper trail. And it's just like, it's so multidimensional, even though it is, you know, on paper, the multidimensionality and the spirit and the alchemy that is created through it, through the transference of it, it's just like really, really powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I mean, it's like one of the biggest things to allow it to operate like that. So we had to create, it's like, and paper is like the start point for it, and then it like spills into so many different things outside of that. So thank you for that reflection. I appreciate it. Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. Okay. And then,
Cool. Okay. Yeah, I just like, just going through them, it just like really showed how like much research truly, like, I feel like goes into it. Like I didn't know, like, just looking at like through like, you know, like Black Punks or like, you know, the scene, but also then I was like reading the zine on like Michael Jackson, and I didn't know about like his song about like Palestine.
Oh yeah.
And I like never really read his lyrics on like, you know, I want to like re-envision like my childhood, or like revert back to that. And it's more of like, it's not a like biographical text. It's more of like, you know, this is like kind of like a melancholic like life story, you know? So I felt like really strongly with like some of these texts, and like the Dilla text as well. Like, I mean, it was so cool. Like, your work is awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. You know, two things. So, Black Punks, that was me thinking about the origins of rock and roll, you know, thinking about Chuck Berry, right? And thinking about him playing the electric guitar, and thinking about how he moved, or thinking about how even before the punk scene even became like a mainstay, thinking, you know, who was even using names that punk, you know, if you fast forward up today, you think about the name Mohawk, you know, which is, you know, synonymous with, you know, punk cultures and hairstyle, and but Charlie Parker had a song in the 50s named Mohawk. And you think about that, and, you know, you think about the black punk scene that's not given a lot of thought or presence. There's a huge punk black scene, you know, even before Bad Brains. There was like in Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., New York, Chicago, a very huge, even in the UK, black punk scene. So that zine, Flying Punks, meant a lot to me, actually, because, you know, it's one of those things where it's in here somewhere. It's fine. It means it means it's part of the process. It means a lot to me because when I was thinking about that, you know, when you think about, if you're going to really think about history and think about the discourse of history or really question history, you have to like always dig deeper for the origins of something. And, you know, to me, the investigation of punk started with different, you know, genres of music. It made me think about Chuck Berry. It made me think about jazz, you know, how they were, you know, adding in punk, not in this, you know, colonized version of what we're thinking about punk is today, but thinking about punk from, you know, from a different perspective. Like, how do you look at punk through the lens of jazz? And I know that could be like how do you merge these two? But there's a lot of consistencies with what was there prior and what was there after. Like, so to me, I'm thinking like punk from two different perspectives, like post-punk, like post-jazz, like all these things after this is like after the fact. So it's like Charlie Parker had this song Mohawk in the 50s, right? And then like you fast forward up, which I found right here. I did the zine. It's called American X Boneheads Come to Hollywood, right? And there's this punk scene, right, that exists in the UK, you know, where they had, you know, black punk, you know, artists and that was creating their own way of operating through different, you know, formats. Letting music be one of them. And you know, I thought that was a very interesting aspect to start from. Like, think about punk, jazz, Chuck Berry, electric guitar, you know, so, yeah. Yeah.
I was just telling Rebecca this, but I feel like one thing I so appreciate about your practice that I'm going to take away and hopefully apply in
Please.
a way is how what goes on the page doesn't always have a ton of context.
Mm-hmm.
It does,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're putting all these clues in, but I'm thinking about the readings, your hearing aid, right, that's across from this other text, and how it kind of, it's funny that we're in an institution that's supposed to be teaching us how to learn and research,
Mm-hmm.
and yet it feels like you're invoking this like internal researcher so much
Mm-hmm.
by, okay, I have no clue what this is, but it says eardrum or something, so I'm going to Google this.
Mm-hmm.
So I just so appreciate that. I feel I was talking to Rebecca about how I come from like internet, I talked about earlier, internet zines, Canva zines, like public history zines that are more, they're like little books more than anything, so much text, and always trying to like legitimize itself. And I just love that your practice feels like very free from that in many ways. But that's how, at least I perceive it.
Yeah, there's a freedom in it because, you know, I think that I'm also thinking about information as it comes. And when, you know, for me, thinking about information as it comes allow me to kind of like think about it in real time, which then, you know, leave very little room for me to try to bring too much context, like, or to contextualize the work too much. Kind of like really doesn't create that much of discourse. So if you leave like a very short duration between yourself and the information that you're offering, you now have left the burden of the person dealing with the information to further it. So it's like, yeah, I'll give you like 4 pages of something, and for sure there's much more, but I left so much space in between. So it's like, what more do I need to know about this? Because there's some stuff have no text. It's maybe an image. It's maybe a text, and that's it. It's been times I've even like seen things online, and I would say, man, like, I'm just gonna put the link in the zine, you know. And someone get the zine, they like put the link in and take them to the video. You know, I like that. You know, so it's just like I can't. You know, I had some zine. It was a performance to this jazz musician, and I was like, all right, I want to share this performance, but I don't feel like sharing it through this way. So I'm gonna put the link, copy the link, put it in the zine, and then when they get it, they could like type in the link, and then it'll just bring them to the video, and you know, so it's like stuff like that, or you know, I don't know, like. Let me see. Like, I just made this one actually before I came. It's called Jihad, and it's just different. You know, thinking about jihad, right? Invasion of territory, no vote, neo-colonialism, rape of resource, sabotage, right? So it just creates thought. Okay, clearly he's talking about a revolt. He's discussing a revolt. A revolt where? Revolt is taking place now. It was taking place then. Revolt is not going to stop. The people are fed up. They don't like this. They don't like what's taking place in their communities. They don't like what's taking place in the institutions. They don't like what's taking place on a world scale. This is a jihad, you know? But, you know, even thinking about the word jihad, right? People have a negative connotation about the word, right? people think that jihad means to just fight. And that is correct. But in my own faith, jihad means to fight against the soul first, right? So you fighting against the purification of your own soul. That's the first jihad. To fight to be a better person, to fight to, be a better person in the world. But, this word has been so misused, especially in the Western world, that it creates this idea that jihad means to automatically kill and to fight. And, I'm also not the one to be friendly with words. Jihad does mean to fight. It do. It's not wrong. But fight with cause, right? So when you think about these things, it's like it also gives you a chance to think about research further beyond the layers of what we think. There was, and I also made this too because a couple of years I had seen, there was I forget his name and it will come back to me, but very quickly. There was a Muslim scholar who went on to Fox News, of all places. It's good to go. Sometimes I think I would go onto Fox News too, just to go back and forth with him sometimes. But he went on Fox News and he had this book. The name of the book was Demystifying Islam for the Western World. And he said that he wrote this book because that the Western world has such a misconception about what it means to be a Muslim, and that he wanted to try his best to educate them to understand, to not necessarily contextualize it, but to kind of like allow them to understand words or understanding what it truly means, what Islam truly means. And I remember the host on, this is a very old interview, but I remember the host on the panel was so quiet and so shocked to know that there was a sensitivity to everything that they had misconceptions about. And I also, and the reason why I brought that as an example is because I try to do that in my work as well. Thinking about the deeper meaning to understanding what's taking place between us and words, and thinking about what's taking place. So even with this title, it's like, if you care to understand more, why don't you just do the research and understand what it truly means, rather than just taking one layer of a word and saying, oh, it just means to fight someone, but not to know that there's a spiritual context at first to the layers, and then everything else you start to get to the underlayers too. So the work also is made, it's all education for myself too. So thank you.
Thank you for that. I know we're about 3 minutes
Yep.
over, but
Okay,
I want to say
I'm sorry.
no,
Thank
you're
you. Oh,
perfect,
okay.
perfect. Round of applause again.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you again for coming out and sharing
Appreciate
with us.
it.
Hopefully
Thank
you
you.
all walk away with something, and maybe this will influence your zines. Yeah, quick.
Can I quickly ask
Yeah.
how you get involved with what you're doing?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I do use the internet. I'm not against the internet. I have an Instagram. BlackMass has an Instagram. I don't have a website. Instagram is probably like the easiest way. I always reply. And through email, if you all have any questions, you're more than welcome to, not to put no weight on you, get my email from Justin. Yeah, I can write it down. And you can always email me. And I'll always reach back out.
And I'll share with the class as we get more events going and more publications going. There may be some work here at UCLA with the arts program here, just to see if we can use some of their equipment. So if we do, I'll let you all know if you all want to come and see how that's used. We can look at that too, folks. Yeah. All right, thank you. Thank y'all again. So 2 weeks again, we'll be back here.
That's my email.
Please keep up with the readings. We're going to engage with them a little bit more in mixed class. And yeah, look forward to seeing y'all.
Thank you all. Absolutely.